The planet Xylos shimmered, a blue-green jewel in the blackness of space. For the Xylosian people, it was their everything: home, history, future. For the Vorgon Hegemony, it was just another Tuesday. One moment, Xylosian cities hummed with life. The next, colossal obsidian ships materialized in their sky, blotting out the sun. These were the Nullifier dreadnoughts of the Vorgon, each one a city killer. There were no grand declarations of war, no demands for surrender. There was only a cold, methodical process. Beams of incandescent energy, impossibly powerful, lanced down. Continents cracked, oceans boiled. Within hours, Xylos was silent, its vibrant surface scarred black. Another world ticked off a list on some distant Vorgon command deck. The Nullifiers, their work done with contemptuous ease, simply vanished, moving on to the next system, the next unsuspecting civilization. This was how the Vorgon Hegemony expanded, effortlessly, relentlessly. Far from the fresh ruins of Xylos, aboard the Terran Federation naval ship Dauntless, the mood was grim. Captain Eva Rostova stared at the star charts flickering on the main view screen. Fragmented reports, little more than ghostly data screams, had been trickling in for weeks from the periphery sectors. Systems going dark, distress calls cut off mid-sentence. Now, the pattern was undeniable. A vast, shadowy force was sweeping through the galaxy, heading directly towards the fledgling Terran Federation. "Anything new, Jian?" Rostova asked, her voice calm despite the knot in her stomach. Lieutenant Commander Jian Li, the ship's tactical officer and chief analyst, leaned closer to his console. His dark eyes scanned lines of cascading code and faint energy signatures. "The latest intercept from listening post Epsilon confirms it, Captain. Multiple high-energy FTL departures from the Glynn system, trajectory aligning with previous incidents. The energy profiles match the entity that silenced Xylos." He hesitated to even call them a fleet. It sounded too conventional for what they were hearing. "The Vorgon Hegemony," Rostova said, the name still tasting alien and menacing on her tongue. Intelligence had pieced together that much from panicked, dying transmissions of other species. "And they're not slowing down." The bridge of the Dauntless was quiet, save for the soft hum of the life support and the gentle clicks of consoles. Every crew member felt the weight of the unspoken. The Dauntless was one of humanity's newest, most advanced warships, a sleek spearhead of Terran ingenuity. But they were one ship. The reports painted a picture of an enemy that devoured entire fleets for breakfast. Rostova turned from the star charts, her gaze sweeping over her bridge crew. They were young, most of them. Capable, brave, but untested against something like this. "Our orders just came through from High Command," she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. "We are to proceed to the Tartarus Nebula. Our mission: investigate, assess the Vorgon capabilities, and if feasible, delay their advance." A ripple of unease went through the bridge. The Tartarus Nebula. Even the name sounded ominous. It was a chaotic soup of dense gas clouds, unpredictable radiation, storms and sensor-blinding gravitic anomalies, a place most ships avoided. The nebula is the only significant stellar obstruction between the Glynn system and the coreward colonies, including Terra itself, Rostova continued, as if explaining the obvious. More to settle her own mind than theirs. "If the Vorgons are maintaining their current trajectory, they'll have to pass through or around it." Jian Li nodded slowly. "A potential choke point, Captain, but also a death trap if you don't know what you're doing. Sensors will be a nightmare, and navigation will be treacherous." "Which is precisely why High Command chose it, Mr. Li," Rostova said, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "And perhaps why they chose us. The Dauntless has the best sensor suite and navigational systems in the fleet." She didn't add that they were also considered expendable if things went truly bad. Some things didn't need to be said aloud. She looked back at the star chart, at the angry red swirl of the Tartarus Nebula. It felt like staring into the maw of some cosmic beast. Beyond it, the faint encroaching symbols representing the Vorgon advance seemed like teeth, ready to devour everything in their path. Her orders were clear, but the if feasible part echoed in her mind. How do you delay a force that erases planets without a second thought? Helm, lay in a course for the Tartarus Nebula. Maximum safe velocity, Rostova commanded. Communications, send a tight beam confirmation to High Command. Dauntless en route. Mission accepted. The deck plates thrummed as the Dauntless's powerful engines prepared to hurl them towards the unknown. Rostova gripped the armrest of her command chair. Her internal thoughts were a whirlwind of duty, fear, and a stubborn refusal to simply roll over. She thought of Earth, of her family, of the billions of unsuspecting lives now depending on the actions of a few. The weight was immense, but it also forged a core of resolve within her. They might be outmatched, they might be heading into the lion's den, but they were humanity, and humanity didn't break easily. As the stars outside the viewscreen began to streak, signaling their jump to faster-than-light travel, Jian Li watched his captain. He saw the strain, but also the steel in her spine. He, too, felt the oppressive weight of the unknown. But beneath it, a sliver of something else. A curious, analytical excitement. The Vorgon were a puzzle, a terrifying, galaxy-consuming puzzle, and Jian Li was very, very good at solving puzzles. The Dauntless plunged into the dark, a tiny spark of defiance heading towards an overwhelming shadow. The Tartarus Nebula awaited. The transition from the clear, star-dusted void into the Tartarus Nebula was like diving into a murky, turbulent ocean. One moment, the Dauntless glided through silent space. The next, it was buffeted by unseen currents and enveloped in swirling clouds of iridescent gas that played havoc with its external sensors. Alarms chirped softly across the bridge as radiation levels spiked and ebbed unpredictably. Report. Captain Rostova's voice was sharp but steady, a fixed point in the swirling chaos. Hull integrity at 99%, Captain, reported the engineering officer. Compensating for localized gravitic shears, drive stable, but she's working hard. Sensors are a mess, Lieutenant Commander Jian Li stated, his fingers flying across his console, trying to filter signal from noise. The exotic particle density is even higher than predicted. It's like trying to see through a blizzard made of radio static and ghosts. The main view screen, usually a crisp window onto the cosmos, was now a psychedelic canvas of shifting colors, sickly greens, deep violets, and angry reds. Ghostly images flickered at the edge of perception, phantoms, born of energy fluctuations that mimicked ship signatures. It was easy to see why most spacefarers gave the Tartarus a wide berth. We knew it would be challenging, Mr. Li, Rostova said. But these conditions also provide cover. If we can't see them clearly, they'll have an even harder time spotting us, assuming their sensor tech isn't leagues beyond ours. A grim assumption, but one they had to make for now. For 3 painstaking days, the Dauntless crept deeper into the nebula. Navigation was a constant battle, the ship's computer and helm officer working overtime to plot a safe course through invisible minefields of radiation pockets and microsingularities. Rostova rarely left the command chair, her eyes constantly scanning the readouts, her mind weighing every decision. Pushing too hard for information could expose them. Being too cautious could mean missing vital intelligence before the main Vorgon fleet arrived. It was Jian Li who finally found something concrete. Captain, I'm picking up faint intermittent drive signatures. Northeast quadrant, sector Gamma 7. Very faint, heavily masked by a plasma stream, but consistent. Rostova leaned forward. Vorgon, the energy profile is unlike anything in our database, but it matches the fragmented data we have on what could be their scout vessels. They're moving slowly, methodically. A search pattern, I think. How many? Jian frowned, coaxing his systems. Difficult to say. The nebula echoes everything. Could be 3, could be 5. They're using tight beam comms, highly encrypted, but I'm catching faint leakage when they realign their network. It seems overly structured. Predictable, even. Rostova considered this. A forward scout element. If we can get a closer look, understand how they operate in these conditions, it could give us an edge. She knew the risks. Getting closer meant increasing their own chances of detection. Mr. Li, Can you refine their positions without us making too much noise? I can try, Captain, Jian said. If we use the large gas giant ahead, Theron Primus, its magnetic field should provide some temporary cover for a passive sensor sweep. We'll have to drift close, engines on minimum. The maneuver took hours. The Dauntless became a ghost, inching its way through the cosmic soup, every crew member at their station, alert and silent. Rostova watched Jian, his face illuminated by the glow of his console, a picture of intense concentration. He wasn't just a tactical officer, he was a hunter, sifting through the digital wilderness for the faintest scent of his quarry. Finally, he looked up, a spark of excitement in his eyes. Got them, Captain. 3 Eradicator-class frigates based on the estimated mass and drive output. They're sweeping the sector in a rigid triangular formation, maintaining precise intervals even, when passing through dense particle clouds that should logically make them vary their speed or path. Rigid, Rostova mused. Interesting. Anything else? Their energy discipline is remarkable, Jian continued, tapping his screen. Almost too remarkable. When they emerge from FTL or make significant course corrections, their engines flare with a specific, highly controlled energy bloom. It's identical across all 3 ships every single time, like it's automated, or they're incredibly drilled to follow an exact procedure. No variation. Why is that significant? Rostova pressed. Most experienced navies, including ours, allow for slight variations to make targeting harder, especially during vulnerable moments like FTL exit. Absolute predictability can be a weakness if someone knows what to look for, Jian explained. And their targeting systems, they seem to prioritize these clear energy blooms. When a sensor ghost flickers with a similar, albeit weaker signature, their internal targeting pings it aggressively until it's dismissed. They're looking for those specific energy flowers. Rostova felt a nascent idea, a tiny spark of hope in the oppressive darkness. You're saying they rely on these predictable patterns? It's more than reliance, Captain, Jian said, his voice dropping slightly. It's almost like a foundational element of their fleet doctrine. Perhaps their systems are optimized for it, to process threats quickly based on these clear markers in normal space conditions. But in a place like this nebula, he trailed off, then his eyes widened slightly. That's it. What is it, Jian? Jian Li looked at Rostova, then around the bridge at the disorienting swirl on the view screen. A slow smile spread across his face. Captain, I think I know how we can fight them. Not by matching their strength, but by using their own rigid procedures, and this chaotic nebula against them. What if we could make them see an entire fleet where there's only one ship? Rostova stared at him, the implications of his words slowly sinking in. A phantom fleet. It was audacious. It was insane. It might just be their only chance. Captain Rostova convened her senior officers in the cramped briefing room adjacent to the bridge. The mood was somber. They had all seen the sensor logs from Jian Li's passive scans of the Vorgon scouts, 3 Eradicator-class frigates, any one of which would be a tough fight for the Dauntless in open space. The thought of a full Nullifier fleet was almost paralyzing. Jian Li stood before them, a holographic display of the Tartarus Nebula shimmering behind him, dotted with the predicted paths of the Vorgon scouts and the lurking position of the Dauntless. The Vorgons, for all their power, appear to operate on a foundation of extreme doctrinal rigidity. Jian began, his voice clear and confident. Their search patterns are inflexible. Their energy signatures at FTL exit are standardized to an almost absurd degree, and their targeting systems aggressively prioritize these distinct energy blooms. They expect predictability. They expect enemies to behave in ways their algorithms can easily categorize and neutralize. He pointed to a complex equation that appeared beside the nebula map. The Dauntless is equipped with the new Mark IV resonance drive. Its primary function is for enhanced FTL efficiency and stealthier FTL transits. However, one of its secondary, largely theoretical capabilities is to generate controlled, localized distortions in space-time, specifically to mimic FTL exit signatures. Chief Engineer Miles Corbin, A grizzled veteran with oil seemingly ingrained in his pores snorted. Mimic FTL signatures? Lieutenant, that system is experimental. We've barely run diagnostics on that function, let alone used it under combat conditions. It's designed to create a brief faint echo, not a convincing illusion of multiple ship arrivals. Under normal circumstances, yes, Chief, Jian acknowledged. But we are not in normal circumstances. The Tartarus Nebula's unique particulate matter and chaotic energy fields actively scatter and amplify such emissions. My simulations suggest that if we carefully calibrate the resonance drive, we can project multiple distinct and seemingly powerful FTL exit blooms at various points within this sector. Not just faint echoes, but what would appear to Vorgon sensors as a coordinated fleet deployment. Commander Valery Orlov, the ship's stoic gunnery chief, raised an eyebrow. A phantom fleet? You propose we try to scare them with ghosts, Lieutenant? Not just scare them, Commander, Jian countered. Confuse them, disrupt them. Their doctrine seems to rely on identifying clear threats based on these energy markers. If we present them with too many credible threats, appearing almost simultaneously from multiple vectors within this sensor-degrading nebula, they will be forced to react. Their rigid formations will have to break to address these perceived new arrivals. Their targeting systems will be overloaded with potential contacts. We can make them fight shadows. He zoomed in on the tactical display. While they are reacting to our phantoms, the Dauntless, concealed by a natural energy distortion, or a focused emission from our own drive, can engage isolated targets. We hit hard, hit fast, and vanish back into the nebula's noise before they can get a clear lock. We become the real ghost among the fakes. A heavy silence filled the room. The audacity of the plan was breathtaking. It relied on a cascade of assumptions. That Jian's analysis of Vorgon doctrine was accurate, that the resonance drive could perform as theorized under extreme stress, and that the crew of the Dauntless could execute such a complex series of feints and attacks flawlessly. Captain Rostova looked at each officer. She saw doubt, concern, but also a glimmer of intrigue. The risks, Mr. Li? Significant, Captain, Jian admitted without hesitation. If the resonance drive fails or produces unconvincing signatures, we've simply announced our presence. If the Vorgons don't react as predicted, if they call our bluff and concentrate fire on the nearest true signature, which would be us, we'd be overwhelmed. There's also the strain on our drive systems. Pushing the resonance drive this hard, repeatedly, is uncharted territory. Corbin grunted. Uncharted means things break, Lieutenant. And out here, if the drive goes, we're not just dead in the water, we're Vorgon target practice. I've run the power consumption models and stress calculations with Lieutenant Corbin's team, Jian said, nodding to the chief engineer. It's pushing the limits, but theoretically manageable if we cycle the power correctly and use the nebula's ambient energy to help mask our true signature during the phantom broadcasts. Rostova was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the swirling nebula in the hologram. Standard tactics were suicide. A direct confrontation was unthinkable. Retreat would mean abandoning the coreward colonies to the Vorgon tide. Jian's plan, for all its wild improbability, offered something else. A chance, however slim. It was a very human plan, relying not on brute force but on cleverness, on understanding the enemy, on turning their strengths into weaknesses. The Vorgons expect us to fight conventionally, Rostova said finally, her voice resonating with newfound conviction. They expect us to line up our ships and be annihilated. They won't expect this. They won't expect a single ship to act like a swarm of hornets appearing from nowhere stinging, and then vanishing into the chaos they so clearly disdain. She looked directly at Jian Li. Your analysis of their rigidity, their reliance on specific energy patterns, it feels right. It's the kind of systemic arrogance that powerful empires often develop. They haven't been seriously challenged in so long. They've forgotten how to adapt to true unpredictability. Then she addressed her senior staff, her gaze firm. This is the best chance we have, not just to gather more intelligence, but to actually hurt them, to show them, and perhaps the rest of the galaxy, that the Vorgon Hegemony is not invincible. She turned back to Jian. Lieutenant Commander Li, refine your simulations. Work with Chief Corbin to prepare the resonance drive. Commander Orlov, I want firing solutions for pinpoint strikes, maximum damage with minimal exposure. We will turn this nebula into our weapon. A new energy seemed to fill the room. The doubt hadn't vanished, but it was now overshadowed by a sense of purpose, a daring resolve. Rostova stood. Prepare the Dauntless for the Deceiver's dance. We give them a show they'll never forget. She paused, a rare grim smile touching her lips. Make it so. The bridge of the TFNS Dauntless was a study in controlled tension. Every officer was at their station, faces illuminated by the soft glow of their consoles. Outside, the Tartarus Nebula churned, a vast, chaotic canvas upon which they were about to paint a masterpiece of deception. Captain Rostova stood firm, her voice the calm center of the impending storm. Resonance drive at full charge, Captain. Chief Engineer Corbin reported from his station, his usual gruffness tinged with nervous energy. All green for sequence initiation. Jian Li, his eyes darting between multiple sensor feeds and the holographic tactical display, gave a curt nod. Vorgon Advance Flotilla is entering Sector Delta Prime, still maintaining their tight triangular formation. They're about 5 minutes from our optimal engagement window. Helm, confirm stealth protocols active. All non-essential emissions are dark, Rostova ordered. Stealth protocols active, Captain. We're a ghost, the Helm officer replied. Those 5 minutes stretched into an eternity. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the ship and the rhythmic beeping of a single timing sequence on Jian's console. Rostova watched the tactical display, where 3 red icons representing Sub-Commander Vrex's Eradicator frigates moved with arrogant precision towards the designated ambush zone. Sequence initiation in 3, 2, 1, mark, Jian called out. With a barely perceptible thrum that resonated through the deck plates, the Dauntless's resonance drive unleashed its carefully orchestrated symphony of lies. On the far side of the Vorgon flotilla, a massive simulated FTL energy bloom erupted on their sensors, the signature of multiple heavy cruisers exiting warp. Almost simultaneously, another cluster of phantom signatures flared to their port flank, mimicking a squadron of destroyers. Then another, and another, appearing at staggered intervals, creating the illusion of a Terran fleet rapidly deploying from multiple directions. It's working, Captain, Jian exclaimed, a triumphant grin flashing across his face. Vorgon sensors are lighting up. They're reading multiple heavy contacts. I'm seeing comms chatter spike between their ships. They're confused, trying to verify. On the main view screen, now slaved to a filtered sensor feed, the neat red triangle of Rex's flotilla faltered. One frigate broke formation, angling towards the largest phantom signature. Another hesitated, then turned to face the simulated destroyer squadron. Their disciplined advance had fractured. They're taking the bait, Rostova breathed, a surge of adrenaline sharpening her focus. They're splitting up to engage perceived threats. Just as you predicted, Jian. Sub-Commander, Vrex aboard his lead Eradicator, stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Moments ago, he was leading a routine sweep. Now his screens were flooded with hostile contacts. Terran ships. Here, in such numbers, his meticulously planned advance was unraveling. Doctrine dictated immediate engagement of prioritized threats. All ships, Vrex broadcast to his small flotilla, his voice tight with urgency. Engage designated targets. Show these primitives the might of the hegemony. Target isolated, Captain, Jian reported, his voice cutting through Vrex's distant, unheard command. Eradicator designated Viper 3 is diverting to intercept Phantom. Group Alpha. It's moving away from its escorts, exposing its flank. Gunnery, lock onto Viper 3, Rostova commanded, her voice like ice. Weapons free on my mark. We get one shot at this before they realize what's happening. Commander Orlov, the gunnery chief, confirmed. Target locked. Kinetic penetrators armed, waiting for your command to deploy the masking pulse. This was a crucial part of Jian's plan. A precisely timed burst of focused energy, calibrated to mimic a standard Vorgon weapon discharge just milliseconds before their own unconventional projectiles hit. The idea was to fool the Eradicator's automated defenses into reacting to a familiar threat type. leaving it vulnerable to the actual unexpected kinetic impact. "Fire on my mark." "Mark," Rostova ordered. The Dauntless shuddered almost imperceptibly. From concealed hardpoints, a volley of dense high-velocity kinetic rods shot through the nebulous haze, unseen by Vorgon sensors that were still focused on energy signatures. Simultaneously, a tight beam of focused energy lanced out from the Dauntless, painting Viper 3. Aboard the doomed Vorgon frigate, alarms blared. "Energy spike detected. Standard Vorgon weapon profile," their tactical officer yelled, confused but reacting on instinct. Shields reconfigured to counter the expected energy attack. It was the last mistake they ever made. The silent, unpowered kinetic rods, ignored by defenses anticipating an energy blast, slammed into Viper 3's flank with devastating force. Armor, designed to repel coherent energy beams, crumpled like paper. The projectiles tore through the ship's internal structure, shredding systems and personnel. Secondary explosions ripped along its spine. On the Dauntless's view screen, the red icon for Viper 3 flashed violently, then abruptly winked out. The destruction was shockingly swift, brutal, and utterly silent in the vacuum of space, save for the exclamations on Rostova's bridge. "Target neutralized, Captain," Orlov confirmed, a note of awe in his voice. "Direct hit. Multiple internal detonations. No survivors." A stunned silence gripped the Vorgon ships. Vrex watched in horrified disbelief as one of his frigates simply vanished from his tactical display. One moment it was there, reporting engagement. The next, nothing. No massive energy discharge that signaled a capital ship kill. No protracted battle. Just gone. "What was that?" Vrex demanded of his sensor officers. "Report! What hit Viper 3? His officers could only offer confused readings. "Unknown anomaly, Sub-Commander. We registered a brief Vorgon-like energy signature, then catastrophic failure of Viper 3. No hostile ship visually identified in that vector." Rostova allowed herself a grim smile. "Phase 1 complete. Mr. Li, prepare for the next sequence. Let's keep them guessing." The Dauntless, its deadly work done for the moment, melted back into the densest part of the nebula, its engines already powering up the resonance drive for another chorus in the Deceiver's dance. The first shockwave had been delivered. The Vorgons were bleeding, and they didn't even know who or what had struck them. Panic was an unfamiliar sensation to Sub-Commander Vrex. The Vorgon Hegemony did not panic, they conquered. Yet, as he stared at the tactical display aboard his Nullifier-class command ship, a recent upgrade hastily assigned to him after the initial baffling loss of his frigate Viper 3, an unsettling disquiet gnawed at his certainty. "Report," Vrex snapped, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Where are these phantom Terrans? Viper Squadron reports engaging multiple hostiles in Sector Gamma 9, but their weapons pass through empty space. Talon Squadron is chasing energy ghosts near the ion cluster. What is happening?" His sensor officer, a usually composed Vorgon with meticulously polished carapace segments, flinched. "Sub-Commander, the readings are inconsistent. We detect FTL signatures clear as crystal, then they vanish. Ships appear on sensors, only to be revealed as dense particle clouds moments later. The nebula itself seems to be fighting us. On the TFNS Dauntless, hidden deep within a swirling miasma of charged dust, Jian Li permitted himself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Vrex is chasing his own tail, Captain. He's dispersed his remaining 2 eradicators and his new command ship, the Nullifier Iron Hand, to 3 different sectors, responding to our latest Phantom deployments. He's stretched thin, trying to be everywhere at once." "And Fleetmaster Korvash?" Captain Rostova asked, keeping her voice even. They'd intercepted heavily encrypted tight-beam transmissions between Vrex's ship and a distant powerful signal presumed to be his superior. Jian's smile faded slightly. "The Fleetmaster is displeased. The tone of the transmissions is escalating. Korvash demands a clear assessment and the immediate annihilation of this primitive Terran resistance. Vrex is under immense pressure." That pressure was evident in Vrex's increasingly erratic commands. He ordered his ships to fire blindly into sensor anomalies, wasting precious energy. He redeployed his forces with frantic haste, only to find his quarry had already jumped to another phantom location. The Dauntless, meanwhile, continued its deadly game. Twice more, it had emerged from the nebula's embrace, its resonance drive silent, to deliver a swift, brutal blow to an isolated Eradicator frigate that had strayed too far in pursuit of ghosts. Each time, the kinetic rods, masked by the familiar flash of a fake Vorgon energy signature, found their mark. Each time, a Vorgon ship simply ceased to exist. The crew of the Dauntless was performing with a mixture of adrenaline-fueled precision and growing, weary confidence. The Deceiver's dance was working, but it was exhausting. Chief Engineer Corbin and his team were coaxing every last erg of power from the drive systems, constantly rerouting energy and patching overloaded circuits. The gunnery teams under Commander Orlov drilled their attack sequences until they were muscle memory. Vrex is consolidating his remaining forces, Jian announced, pointing to the tactical display. He's recalled his last Eradicator, the Steel Fang, to protect his Nullifier flagship. They're moving towards the Zephyr Passage, a relatively clearer channel through this part of the nebula. He's likely trying to draw us into a more conventional engagement there, or perhaps attempt a coordinated FTL jump out of the system. He's learning then, Rostova observed, or getting desperate. A bit of both, I suspect, Captain, Jian replied. But his desperation might be our next opportunity. The Zephyr Passage narrows considerably at its apex. If we can lure him deeper into it, he tapped his console, bringing up a new set of calculations. I think we can use the passage's unique gravitic eddies, combined with a very precisely timed phantom signature, to make him believe reinforcements are arriving behind him, cutting off his retreat. You want to box him in? Exactly. Make him believe his only way out is forward, deeper into the trap. Jian's eyes gleamed. And at the narrowest point, there's a dense cluster of metallic asteroids, perfect for masking our approach for the final blow. It was a bold continuation of their strategy. Vrex, now down to his flagship and one remaining frigate, was indeed rattled. The reports from Fleetmaster Korvash were becoming scathing. Failure is not an option. Incompetence will be purged. The hegemony did not tolerate mistakes. He had to regain control, had to deliver a victory. When his sensors picked up a new powerful FTL bloom, a signature too large for a single cruiser, perhaps even a battleship, appearing to seal off the entrance to the Zephyr Passage behind him, a cold dread filled him. Trapped. All power. To forward shield, Steelfang, Vrex commanded his escort. We punch through. There must be an exit on the far side of this cursed passage. All weapons ready. He refused to believe the Terrans could have deployed such a heavy force so quickly, but the sensor readings were undeniable, playing on his ingrained reliance on energy signatures. His ships plunged deeper into the Zephyr Passage, the towering nebula walls closing in on either side. The phantom battleship signature behind them held its position, a silent, menacing guard. On the Dauntless, Rostova watched the Vorgon ships move into the predicted kill zone. He took the bait, Jian. Hook, line, and sinker. He's reacting according to established Vorgon protocols for facing a superior blocking force, Captain. Attempt a concentrated breakthrough at the perceived weakest point, which is exactly where we want him. The strain was showing on the Dauntless crew. Their faces were pale, etched with fatigue, but their eyes burned with a fierce light. They were rewriting the rules of engagement. One phantom signal, one perfectly aimed shot at a time. The Vorgon machine, so used to effortless dominance, was slowly, painfully unraveling under the pressure of an enemy it couldn't see, couldn't understand, and certainly couldn't predict. Confusion reigned, and in that confusion, humanity found its strength. Subcommander Vrex pushed his ships hard through the Zephyr Passage. The towering, glowing walls of the nebula seemed to press in on them, the silence of space amplifying the frantic thrum of his own Nullifier's strained engines. Behind him, the sensor ghost of a Terran battleship maintained its implacable guard. Before him, only the narrowing tunnel of relatively clear space and the hope of escape or a glorious, redeeming battle. Status of the Steel Fang? Vrex demanded, his voice raspy. Holding formation, Sub-Commander, came the reply from his tactical officer. Shields are fluctuating slightly from ambient radiation, but holding. We're approaching the asteroid cluster at the passage's narrowest point. On the TFNS Dauntless, Captain Rostova and Jian Li watched the two red icons representing Vrex's flagship, the Iron Hand, and its escort, the Steel Fang, slide deeper into their carefully prepared trap. They're committed, Captain, Jian said, his voice tight with anticipation. The asteroid cluster ahead is dense, perfect for our final approach. There's a significant gravitic anomaly just beyond it, a collapsed dwarf star. We can use its gravity well to slingshot us around and behind them, masked by a final volley of phantom signals directly in their path. It was an incredibly risky maneuver. A gravitational slingshot required pinpoint precision. Miscalculate, and the Dauntless could be torn apart or flung into the nebula's depths. But it offered the element of absolute surprise. Rostova took a deep breath. Commander Orlov, prepare the resonance torpedoes, all tubes. Chief Corbin, I need every ounce of power you can give the engines and structural integrity fields for this maneuver. Helm, on my mark, you'll execute the slingshot exactly as plotted by Mr. Li. A ripple of acknowledgement went around the bridge. This was it, the culmination of their desperate, brilliant gambit. Now, Mr. Li, Rostova said, let's give them something to look at. The resonance drive pulsed one last time, but this time, it wasn't a spread of FTL signatures. Instead, it focused its energy, working with the nebula's own bizarre physics, to project the illusion of several smaller, fast-attack craft directly in front of the advancing Vorgon ships, appearing to emerge from the asteroid field. Terran. Attack craft forward! Vrex's tactical officer shouted. Engaging! The Iron Hand and Steel Fang opened fire, their powerful energy beams slicing into the empty space where the phantoms flickered. It was the distraction the Dauntless needed. Execute slingshot maneuver. Now, Rostova commanded. The Dauntless plunged towards the gravitic anomaly. Inertial dampeners strained, and the ship groaned under the immense tidal forces. On the view screen, the stars twisted into psychedelic streaks. For a heart-stopping moment, alarms blared as the ship was buffeted violently. Then, with a final powerful surge from its engines, they were through, flung around the dwarf star's remnant, and emerging at astonishing speed from behind a large, metallic asteroid, directly onto the vulnerable rear flank of the preoccupied Vorgon vessels. We're in position, Captain, the helm officer cried, his voice triumphant. Aft shields of both targets exposed. All weapons, fire. Rostova's voice rang with cold fury. The Dauntless unleashed hell. Kinetic penetrators honed, to a razor edge of destructive efficiency, slammed into the Steel Fang. The Eradicator, already damaged from previous phantom encounters and caught completely by surprise, erupted in a series of catastrophic explosions, its spine snapping as it was torn apart from stern to bow. It was over in seconds. Simultaneously, the experimental resonance torpedoes, Jian Li's pet project, streaked towards the massive Nullifier dreadnought, Iron Hand. These weren't just explosive charges. They were designed to resonate with a subtle harmonic frequency Jian had discovered in the recordings of Vorgon shield technology, a frequency their powerful defenses were inexplicably deaf to. Aboard the Iron Hand, Sub-Commander Vrex saw the Steel Fang disintegrate on his monitors. Before he could even process the shock, new alarms shrieked. Multiple torpedo impacts aft shields, his officer screamed. Shields are failing. They're not holding. Vrex stared as his seemingly impenetrable shields flickered, shimmered, and then collapsed like soap bubbles under the assault of the human torpedoes. He saw the flashes of the warheads detonating directly against his hull. Explosions rocked the Nullifier. Lights failed. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. The bridge of the Iron Hand was thrown into chaos. Vorgon crewmen were tossed about like dolls. Vrex clung to his command throne, his mind reeling. How? How could this be happening? A single, primitive ship. He looked at his main view screen, which miraculously still flickered with an image. He saw the Terran warship, sleek and deadly, maneuvering with impossible grace as it poured fire into his crippled vessel. He saw the cool, unwavering determination in its design. In that moment, Vrex understood. He hadn't been fighting a primitive race. He had been fighting an opponent who thought differently, who saw weaknesses where the Vorgon saw only overwhelming strength, who turned the galaxy itself into a weapon. He had been outmaneuvered, outthought, and utterly defeated. On the TFNS Dauntless, the bridge was silent except for the crisp damage reports from Commander Orlov. Nullifier flagship critically damaged, Captain. Multiple hull breaches, drive offline, weapon systems failing across the board. She's dead in the water. A collective breath, held for what seemed like an eternity, was released. Cheers erupted. Officers clasped each other on the shoulder. Some wept openly with relief and exhaustion. Captain Rostova sank back into her chair, the immense tension slowly draining from her. She looked at Jian Li, who was watching the crippled Nullifier with a quiet, profound satisfaction. They had done it. Against all odds, the lone Dauntless had faced down the vanguard of the Vorgon Hegemony and delivered a stunning, decisive blow. The Tartarus sting had found its mark. The silence on the bridge was broken only by the soft hum of their own ship, victorious, floating amidst the wreckage of an enemy who had believed themselves untouchable. The crippled Nullifier dreadnought, the Iron Hand, drifted helplessly amidst the glowing dust of the Zephyr passage. Its advanced weaponry was silent, its engines cold, its once proud hull scarred and breached. On the bridge of the TFNS Dauntless, the sounds of celebration gradually subsided, replaced by the sober accounting of their victory. "Captain," Jian Li reported, his voice still carrying a trace of wonder, "I'm picking up multiple FTL jump signatures from the deeper regions of the Tartarus Nebula. All Vorgon profiles, they're not approaching, they're retreating, pulling out of the nebula entirely." Rostova nodded slowly. "They must have lost contact with Vrex's flotilla and the Iron Hand. Without their command element, and likely picking up the energy surges from our battle, any remaining scouts are pulling back. They don't know what they're facing anymore." Her attention turned to the disabled Nullifier. "Damage report, Mr. Orlov." "Extensive, Captain. She's not going anywhere under her own power. Life support is failing throughout most of her decks. I doubt there are many survivors, if any." Rostova considered her options. Capturing a Nullifier dreadnought would be an intelligence prize beyond measure. But the Dauntless was battered, her crew exhausted, and they were still deep in hostile territory. Towing it was impossible, and securing it against a potential Vorgon counterattack was out of the question. "Mr. Orlov," she said, her voice heavy with the decision, "prepare a full torpedo spread. Target their primary weapon arrays and engine core. We can't let this ship fall back into their hands or be salvaged by any other curious parties. Let the record show we offered no quarter because none was expected, and none would have been given." It was a grim necessity. A final volley of torpedoes from the Dauntless struck the Iron Hand. The massive Vorgon warship, already a ruin, convulsed as internal explosions tore it apart from within. It broke into several large flaming pieces before a final brilliant flash signaled the detonation of its core, scattering its remains across the asteroid field. The Vorgon threat in the Tartarus Nebula had been utterly extinguished. Only then did Rostova allow herself to fully assess their own situation. "Chief Corbin, report our status." The chief engineer's voice was hoarse. "We took some hits during that slingshot maneuver, Captain. Hull integrity is down to 70% in sections 3 and 4. Starboard engine nacelle is running rough. We'll need dry dock repairs. Several microfractures along the keel. And we have casualties. Medical bay reports 3 dead, 7 injured, 2 critical, from when that gravitic shear nearly tore us apart." A somber silence fell over the bridge. 3 dead. The cost of their impossible victory. Rostova felt each loss like a physical blow. They had won, but not without sacrifice. "See to the injured, Chief, and prepare a memorial service for our fallen when we're clear of the nebula. They won't be forgotten." As the Dauntless, battered but unbowed, limped out of the chaotic beauty of the Tartarus Nebula and back into the relatively clear space of the Terran border, its journey was just beginning in another sense. Whispers started to spread through the hidden corners of the galactic network. Smugglers, independent traders, listening posts of neutral species. They had all noted the sudden panicked retreat of Vorgon scout elements from the Tartarus region. They'd seen the sensor ghosts of a massive Vorgon dreadnought vanishing, and the emergence of a single unidentified warship. The initial reports were garbled, dismissed by many as fantasy. A lone ship stopping a Vorgon flotilla? Impossible. The Vorgon Hegemony was an unstoppable force of nature. Yet the whispers persisted, fueled by the undeniable absence of Vorgon activity in a sector they had clearly targeted for conquest. They called it the Tartarus anomaly, or sometimes, with a touch of awe, Rostova's Gambit, though none yet knew her name. Far away, aboard his super dreadnought command center, Fleetmaster Korvash stared at the final, fragmented report from Sub-Commander Vrex, followed by the chilling silence and the cascading FTL jump signatures of his retreating scouts. His many eyes narrowed. An entire advance flotilla led by a nullifier neutralized, not by a fleet, not by a planetary defense grid, but by anomalies. Unexplained phenomena. Primitive interference. He would not, could not, yet acknowledge it as the actions of a single, inferior ship. But the data was undeniable, an unprecedented failure. The Tartarus sector would be marked for further overwhelming investigation. The hegemony would find the cause of this irritation, and it would be scoured from existence. But for now, a seed of uncertainty had been planted in the cold, calculating core of the Vorgon war machine. A week later, the TFNS Dauntless finally reached a secure Terran outpost. Captain Eva Rostova, her face etched with fatigue but her eyes clear and resolute, finalized her official report. She detailed the Deceiver's dance, the experimental tactics, the performance of her ship and crew, and the stark reality of their losses. She knew this victory, monumental as it was not the end of the war with the Vorgon hegemony. It was, perhaps, the end of the beginning. Humanity had been underestimated, they had been dismissed. Now they had drawn a line in the interstellar dust. They had shown the galaxy that they would not be another silent victim on the Vorgon's list of conquests. Transmit the report to Terran High Command, Rostova ordered her communications officer. Azur, the encrypted data stream shot towards Earth. Rostova looked out at the stars. A new dawn was breaking, not just for her crew, but for humanity. A dawn purchased with courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. The galaxy was vast and filled with terrors, but now it also knew that humans were not to be trifled with. They were the underdog who had just landed a staggering blow, and their defiant spirit now echoed among the stars. The galaxy was wary, and humanity, for the first time, felt the thrill of being the reason why.